I don't know how far my memory wants to go today, but the water makes me think of my first break with my roots, which was taking the ship from Spain to America, which is when the diary began. That was my first journey, a journey which was also a bridge, a breaking of a bridge with Europe and with my father. I don't know if I kept from that time the love of water as the element, most important element in my life, the idea of travel, perhaps the idea of return to Europe, because I associated all travel at that time with ships. I have a great love of ships, a great love of journeys. So I'd say then with a voyage, which was a loss and a breaking away from one continent to go to another continent. It started on that ship, which represented a very threatening journey to an unknown land, to tell the story of the journey, because the diary didn't begin as a diary. It began as a letter to my father. So I was very careful of every detail of the life on board the ship. At that time, it took 13 days to come from Spain. Every detail of the arrival. I made special entries with descriptions of this new country to entice him to come. He didn't know any English, so it was all very foreign to him. It may have been my mother's wish to take us into another culture to which he could not follow. My little basket in which I carried a diary when I came from Spain to America. I never let go of that little basket. My image of what America would be like, peopled by Indians with tents and feathers. Instead, I found the very tall buildings of New York, making it impossible to see the sky. School seemed like a prison. So I depicted the school window as a prison window. All the feelings that children have. Yes, I guess the whole thing, the letters, descriptions, and drawings were for my father. Then my mother said that I couldn't mail them because they might get lost. In that way, she really made me keep them, though they weren't intended to be kept as a diary. What I publish is about half of what I've written, but there's very little of the essential left out, in the sense that I think there is enough there for everyone to be able to read between the lines and complete the story. If I had put in every word and detail, you would miss the real purpose of the diary, which is the inner journey, free association. So you remember what you feel strongest at the moment, and the whole thing acquires a living quality. When I began editing the diaries, I became aware of a wonderful image. Relationships were very much like stellar constellations, friendships which gravitated around the city. I always found myself in the midst of an ever-growing cluster of friends, artists, writers, musicians. Paris, Conrad Maurican, the astrologer, Henry Miller, Larry Durrell, whom I met through Henry, Antonin Artaud, poet, letter writer, who later had such a strong influence on the theater. Otto Rank, the psychiatrist. Rank was a very learned, erudite man who brought to bear upon psychoanalysis a tremendous understanding of creativity, especially in his book, Art and Artist. My first really passionate love for a writer was D.H. Lawrence. Reading him was a discovery for me. His descriptions of emotions, sensations, instincts, ambivalence, all the obscure and elusive parts of experience were an illumination of the path I wanted to follow. My first book was a study of him, which I called an unprofessional study, because I was very well aware of having dropped out of school and being self-taught and not academic. I often ask myself why I began to edit the diaries in 1931. I was living in a lovely place where I was a lonely writer. I had written the book on D.H. Lawrence, but I knew no one else who was writing. And 1931 was also the year when Henry Miller and his wife came to visit me in Louvciennes, and that began the interesting part of my life. When Henry appeared, what was always so obvious in him was his tremendous joy in life, his humor, his enjoyment of everything, his curiosity about everything. As soon as he appeared, one felt elated by his presence.
The thing that distinguished you in a group was that you were the listener, but your listening was always eloquent. In the last few years, one sees quite a few either writings about you or quotations from you about dreams and the dream life. And I feel that they haven't really understood what you mean about this. I don't think you want people to be living in a dream state while conscious, do you, and walking around, or
No.
there should be no. But you mean that the dream has its uses, its effectiveness
Yes.
in life afterwards.
Yes,
Oh.
no, I meant something else. I meant that we could arrive at a state where what we dream at night would be like the blueprint for what we wish to fulfill or
Yes,
to reach. And if
yes.
we understand the dream, then we know what the secret self
Yes,
is. And then
yes.
this secret self we can fulfill.
Yeah.
I just finished this book about writing and the writers. And I said that if they would trust, that people could do this if they trusted the artist to do the dreaming, you see, and then instead of taking drugs, say, they
Yes.
watched a painting for a long time or watched a mobile for a long time or trusted the artist or looked
Yeah.
at a painting very deeply, that they would be set off on their own dreaming.
Instead of what they do now,
Yes.
trying to understand, you mean, with their intellect,
Yes.
the artist
If they
and
just
his work.
dreamt it, and I
Yeah.
always give the example of dreaming about the houseboat and then getting it and then writing the stories and then living in it and then going on. You see, from first of all, a fantasy.
Yes, yes.
No, you're right when you say people don't understand what I mean, and then when they say the dream like writing,
Yes.
it's not in life.
Yes.
And I'm always trying to say it's related to the life, it nourishes it,
Yes, yes.
it
Right.
frees us. One night in a cafe, Larry and Henry and I sat a whole night discussing writing. And it was the first time that it occurred to me that I had to take a path of my own, go my own way. Because I really didn't agree with Larry's idea that first of all you have to write a Hamlet before you write well, like the idea of drawing academically first before you become a painter. And I didn't quite agree with Henry's idea either, who denied the personal motivation in his work. I wanted to admit the personal motivation and write in a personal way, very close to experience, and what I felt to be the difference between what a man has to say and what a woman has to say. Perhaps Larry and Henry will go the same way, but I will have to go another, the woman's way.